Okay, next installment, my whole Surface versus iPad comparison. Now, for whatever reason, Apple has separated their iPad and laptop displays in the stores. In fact, I was working with a refit on that. I don't know why they did that, but it was their own corporate decision. The Surface is there's several different types. I have the RT that was the promotional, inexpensive model, which basically I think similar to this, but this is 64 gig. I got the 32 gig, and it was the $200 deal, which I think came and went. And but it's interesting because in a store you can see where you've got some other stuff going on. Well, see, here's something I've just learned, is apparently they don't all use the same video cable, and it's not a micro HDMI, which I originally thought it was. I was just about to buy the micro HDMI adapter, which means you have to buy the Microsoft accessories for that. Now, the Microsoft keyboards are not absolutely mandatory on that type of thing. But when you talk about some of these cables and adapters, they're the only game in town. It's proprietary. So this one, it's in the stores at $39.99, on Amazon $37.99. No significant savings when you consider you can just go down to the store and get it. And the difference on the keypads, even though they look nearly identical in photos on the internet, the more expensive one has real buttons, while the cheaper model uses, kind of like these little sensitive pad type things on there, and then they're all held on magnetically. But realize when that's the magnetically attached keyboard, that doesn't interfere with the kickstand. It's not really a case, it's just that when it's closed, it covers your screen. And that's the other thing I figured out, that I kind of like the idea of just having a USB hub with a conventional, inexpensive conventional keyboard. And then, I could be wrong about it, but some of these little power outlets, they're slightly different from each other. So what we're doing is figuring out that you kind of got to buy the Surface proprietary accessories on this, and they're not as likely to do standardized docking stations anytime soon, because the little connectors for this stuff are in different points. Okay, so depending on whether you got the Pro or the Pro 2 or which model, these little connector points end up in different places depending on the model you have. And so even though all Microsoft Surface are going to look very, very similar, let's say somebody shows up to a meeting and they whip one out, you don't know if he's got the $1,000 model or the $200 model, unless you're really hip to where these little attachment points are located. So anyway, I got this little cable on an open box deal. The guy told me this is a particular cable, and you're really going to have somebody in the store explain to you so that you're getting the right cable to go with the right unit, because apparently they're not all standardized. The Pro model takes this type, which is I guess proprietary. I thought it was micro SD, but they're telling me it's proprietary. So that's something to keep in mind when guys are comparing a Surface to the iPad, is you got to make sure you're going apples to apples and oranges to oranges on these things. All right, so the last segment, testing the Microsoft Surface RT as with a television. Okay, I played around with this computer monitor right here. The computer monitor, I would say, was from 2010. Okay, and it doesn't have an HDMI input. And what I did, this was the last monitor I ever bought, probably the last monitor I ever will buy. After that, everything I buy is basically, I buy a TV that has a computer input, because a lot of the, and even then, I'm going to buy computers that have an HDMI output. That's my last few computers at Dell, which I'm retiring, or semi-retiring, doesn't have the HDMI output. My desktop, my gaming machines, all that stuff, that would have the HDMI output. The Microsoft Surface also is set up with, it's an HDMI output, but apparently they're using a proprietary cable. At first, I thought it was just the micro HDMI. What the guy at Best Buy explained to me is, no, they use a proprietary cable. The cable then plugs into a standard HDMI. So this, between here and here, is almost 40 bucks for that cable. And so realize, even though they'll cut you a really good deal on a Microsoft Surface, as soon as you get into the other thing, you're going to end up spending a lot of money. Now, the thing I've also found in plugging this in at the television, at first I wasn't getting any sound through the television, and then this thing goes into sleep mode pretty frequently. When it broke into then out of sleep mode, I started to get sound through the television. So as I go through something that we would know fairly well has been in HD, and let's say from one of the newer Star Wars things, we can take a look at how that goes. And you know, as long as you're keeping your screen size limited, you're good to go. The way this is going, you can see up here on the side, I've got an excellent video transmission. Everything that's truly computer generated is excellent video transmission, which means that our game resolution is going to be excellent. That's because this uses the NVIDIA video card that's incorporated into a lot of laptops. It's basically a laptop crammed into a tablet format. It's also used on the Xbox gaming systems. As soon as you're talking about other sourced video, it's okay. It really needs to be something that is optimized of, by, and for computer resolution. If it's film that's been adapted over to HD, it's not wonderful, but this is the early 2000s adaptation. I think it's or I don't know, it's about a 2007, 2008 adaptation of the story where Obi-Wan tells Luke what his family history is. The way this goes is it was 720 HD. I don't think that was 1080 on the original format. So this television is a 720 thing, but when it's getting its signal straight from a computer, it tends to do, you know, really on the upper edge of that, because it is an HD, it's a Sony, and so what I'm finding is that Sony's 720 HD is about as good as some of the lesser brands 1080p. So it depends on how they set it. But one thing we are showing does fully function is video output on the Surface RT. This was the cheapest of the Microsoft Surface, over to a 32-inch TV, using that as a monitor, so that if you're going to do, let's say, video presentation or something like that, you're going to do just fine. If you're going to do PowerPoint or anything like that, you're just fine. It's got all the resolution you need for outputting to that type of equipment. It's probably going to shorten your battery life to be outputting to the video, but if you need to make a PowerPoint presentation or something like that, it sure is expensive for this cable. And the only cable I found was a HDMI, which means you have to use a relatively modern monitor, projector, screen piece of equipment that's capable of dealing with HDMI. If you're going to use some of the computer monitors that use VGA or something like that, you might run into a problem.